Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of JavaScript Jabber. This week on our panel we have Steve Edwards.
Covering for AJ. Yo, 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 coming at you from a somewhat cloudy and not too cool Portland.
Yeah, I don't know if we directly addressed that. I think AJ said it, but he's kind of backed out of the podcast for the foreseeable future. So I think most of his work is not in JavaScript these days, and so he didn't feel like it was a tremendously good fit. But anyway, I'm Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs. It feels like forever since I've been able to get on and record one of these, so I'm kind of excited to see how it goes. Yeah, we have Erik Hanchett. Erik, you've been on the show before and you co-hosted Views on Vue, I think way back when, so you shouldn't be a stranger to people. But yeah, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And yeah, Views on Vue, look that one up back in the archives if you can. That was a fun podcast.
Yeah, all of the archives are still out there. We're not producing any new episodes. I don't have any plans to bring it back, but if the right opportunity comes up, I guess we could. It's just, yeah. Anyway, so what's new, Erik?
Yeah, hey, well, thanks for having me on again. It's good to be back here. I thought it'd be fun. I've emailed Steven about like different things that are happening, but one is VueConf. I thought it'd be fun to talk about VueConf. For those who don't know, there's a couple different VueConfs. There's one in the United States. There's one in Europe, but I went to the one in the United States a few weeks ago. Actually, it was in May, so I guess that's a month ago. And it was in Tampa, USA. So I thought we could chat about that at first.
Yeah. Now, are all of them put on by the same organization, or do they just share a name, or how does that work?
I don't know exactly. I believe they are the same organization that does the one in Europe and the one in the United States.
Okay.
It's Evan Yu. I believe it's a part of his companies that he's working on, and he helps put it on. I don't think he actually owns the company, but he's a part of it, of course.
Right. Well, that makes sense, given his role with Vue. So how was VueConf?
Yeah, it was awesome. So there's this, I know probably on this podcast and many others, the conversation tends to always move over to React. And of course, React is still the biggest front-end framework out there. However, the Vue community is still going strong. It's very vibrant. It was a 3-day event, the first day being a workshop, the second 2 days being talks. And well, of course, Evan Yu was there, and we had this nice little quaint conference center that we were at to give all the talks. But it was really just cool to see all the kind of the big names in the Vue community come together and talk. And I think like just being there, just the hallway track itself was worth it. Of course, the talks were interesting. I gave a lightning talk. It was on AI. That's another theme that I saw a lot during the conference, is just a lot. I think every probably front end conference in the last 2 years have had at least one talk or two on AI. And I think this was no exception. So it was really interesting to hear everybody's opinions about how they're using AI. I'm sure you guys had many podcasts recently about that too, or at least touched on that. So it was really cool, like to be in person and to hear everybody talk about it. But like some really nice, really cool people that I got to meet again was Alex Riviere. He did a really interesting talk on props in Vue 3. Daniel Rowe, you've had him on this podcast before, right?
Yeah.
Have we had him on here? I know I talked to him a bunch of times on Views on Vue.
Yeah, it might have been Views on Vue. I don't remember for sure if we've had him on JavaScript Jabber.
He did a Nuxt talk, like the state of building advanced apps Nuxt, some more of a Nuxt type talk. And every time I hear about Nuxt, I just think, man, they're just doing so much. And it's just so cool that's happening in that community. So you don't know that's a meta framework for Vue. It's sort of the equivalent from React to Next.js's Vue to Nuxt.js. They have different approaches though. Like in the React ecosystem with Next, they've really leaned into the server components, while the Nuxt side is still by and large client components, but you do have server-side rendering, you do have API routes, but it's not like server components by default. So, and hearing him talk about that was interesting. I also love every talk that I go to at one of these conferences where they have audience participation, and this was no different. Like giving during the talk, we could do emojis. So have you ever been to a talk that have done that? Like they're like, hey, if you open up, they'll have a QR code and you'll scan it on your phone during the talk, and then you can like press a button and send emoji and it'll show up on the screen.
I've seen things like that. I don't know if I've seen that in particular.
Although I will say someone thought they were funny. So I'm sure they like created a script. So at one point there was like hundreds of emojis on the screen coming down while he was talking. It was still enough. I think he rate limited enough. So it wasn't to the point where you couldn't see the slides completely, but it was like quite a bit. It was like hundreds. And I don't think the audience was pressing like the thumbs up button 100 times.
That's really funny.
There's always got to be somebody pushing the limits.
Yeah.
I actually was once at a conference where someone did a similar thing, but someone totally like messed up their presentation by sending them like thousands of things on the screen.
Well, that's programmers.
I did the lightning talk on creating different specs with AI tooling. So one thing that we've seen is there's this vibe coding way of developers are creating apps where you just kind of use Cursor, Windsurf to go in and create an app, and then or GitHub Copilot, and then you're kind of just asking it things and it's updating it. Well, I think there's like better ways to do that, and I called this like a spec development way of doing it, where you're asking the AI to help you create a design document first, and then having it create an implementation guide from that design document. So I listed out ways you can use Amazon QCLI, which is a tool that we have that's basically free. It's free with something called Builder ID. You don't need a credit card or anything. You just sign up with an email address, and then you can start using it on the command line, and you can ask it like, hey, help me go through and add a landing page, or I'm using a C. Can you do this? And it can do this. So it could do all sorts of things. And so I walked through this whole presentation of me using this way of creating this design document to help create more complicated apps where vibe coding doesn't quite reach.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have to admit that I've been doing quite a bit of that. I mean, for work, yeah, probably 80% of the code is stuff that I'm just writing. But I do find that, I'll ask the AI to help me do something, and it'll just, off it goes. And, it gets it 60-70% correct, and then I can fix the rest, and then I put in whatever it is that I need to do and then do it again. So I don't know if that's vibe coding, but
yeah, it is. It's kind of an overused term, I think, nowadays, but I'd consider that more vibe coding. I guess if you want in the purest sense, it's where you literally just prompt over and over again, and you never touch the code at all, and you're just kind of changing the prompts over and over again to get what you want. And I think as us developers, that does get a little frustrating. So I'm always like going into the code, fixing things, trying to make it better, or doing inline edits instead of doing it that other way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. And I have friends that have just been straight up vibe coding because they don't really understand how the code works. But what I've been seeing a lot where I'm at is that, a lot of people are using it as kind of that tool where it's, I don't know where to start, or this should be something that the code can, it can ingest enough and then, give me a faster solution than I can come up with on my own. And then, with my understanding and skill set, I can vastly increase the time frame under which it does whatever it does. And so I'm seeing a lot of developers using it that way to kind of speed up their process.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right way to do it.
Yeah.
I will say too. Go ahead. I was going to say in general too, it was super fun conference, meeting everyone. And I think that's half the part of going to these conferences. But I kind of want to say like a little PSA just for everyone listening that I know it's hard because just the economy and some people can go, places cannot, but try to go to some of these events, because I definitely see, and I'm a senior developer advocate at AWS. So part of my job is to go to conferences, to teach people, to meet people.
Right.
But I've seen like the conference overall, the attendance in a lot of these in-person conferences kind of they're just not great. Like a lot, VueConf did well, but it's still like in general, it's down still from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And just a lot of people are not going to these events as much. They're not going to meetups as much. And that's a real shame. So hopefully we can just get more people and start growing again on some of these conferences, because it does have I think it has a lot of benefit.
Yeah, I agree. For my job at Prize Picks, I'm mostly doing Ruby on Rails, but a lot of the conferences out there, yeah, their attendance is low. I will say that the exception in the Rails world is Rails World, and that's put on by the Rails Foundation. And the thing is I think there are a couple of things that are going on, and one of them is the economy. Rails World sells out in like 20 minutes. They're done. And it's a decent sized conference. I think that the difference though is that people know what they're going to get, and they know they're going to get what they want. And so some of these conferences that have been around for a while, folks are showing up because they're invested in something like Vue for VueConf, but it doesn't have that promise of being the thing that they want, or giving and delivering what they think they need. And I think some of it is sort of the momentum, it killed the conference momentum having COVID. But I think also there's a lot going on with people just, it's like, okay, well, if I go and take 2 or 3 days off to attend, is it going to be worth it? And I think that's on the conference to kind of give that to people and say, hey, we are innovating, and here's what you're going to get. And then also just understanding that, yeah, the hallway track, at least in my opinion, is worth half the ticket price. And I don't think people realize that. So I echo your call to attend the in-person conferences. If you can't, then yeah, participate online if you can. And then the meetups, they just started the meetup here again for a couple of the technology areas that I care about. And they're not super well attended, but they're still very, very helpful, because you'll have somebody else show up and talk through something you haven't heard. And so it's like, oh, that looks really useful, and I can use that at work. And, anyway, yeah, there's a lot to like about that. So I agree. People ought to really be looking at it.
Yeah, I'll throw in my 2 cents here. When I was living in the Drupal world, I went to DrupalCon every year. And like Erik mentioned, the hallway track was probably just as important, if not more important, than the sessions, because the sessions are always recorded and you can come back and watch them later. But one of the things they would do at DrupalCons was they would have a coder lounge where, everybody could just sit there and get together and work on a project. And you would see stuff come from those sessions, that would become modules or, different functionality later. I can remember one particular year I was dealing with a sort of a thorny issue with what's called a migration, which was, where you'd set up a new site and then migrate all your data from your old site to a new site and fit it into the new structure. Couldn't figure it out. And I happened to go into the coder lounge, and here's a guy that maintains the module that I'm working with, and sat down 10 minutes and he helped me figure it out. And I was good to go from there. Other communications, connections I made with people at conferences that I was able to leverage later. Or, the big thing is, in an online world, actually meeting somebody in real life that you only know online is always, fantastic to do. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to get to a VueConf yet, but I just changed jobs. And the organization I'm at now, not only do we run our own conferences in the networking space, but we also encourage going to conferences and making presentations and stuff like that. So my boss and I are already talking about going to VueConf next year. So I'm really, really looking forward to be able to do that. But the in-person stuff is really worthwhile. You get more than, if you do it right. You got to get out and meet people. You can't just sit around and go to sessions and then go back to your hotel room. You got to make an effort to get out and meet people, but it's always worth it.
Yeah, I should clarify, if you haven't picked up on it by now, the hallway track is basically the socializing that happens outside of the sessions.
Right.
So a lot of times I can't describe how many times I've been to conferences and just been standing right outside of one of the lecture halls and just chatting with people. And I've done this for podcasting conferences and for programming conferences, and the connections are priceless. I mean, people just, you'll find people that have solved the problem you're trying to solve most of the time.
Oh yeah.
And so just having those conversations, oh, well, what are you doing? Oh, well, well, there's this, and this, or we ran into that last year and we solved it this way. And then the other thing that you run into is just, beyond the connections, it's, people giving you those technical ideas. And so, so it may be somebody that you interface with a bunch of times after the conference. Okay, well, how did you get past this part of this problem? And then other times it's just, it's, hey, I hadn't even thought of that. And, it takes you down a path that solves a bunch of problems for you or your company. And anyway, it's really terrific. So
I remember I was at DrupalCon one time, and there was this one thorny issue I'd been trying to address, a particular site I wanted to create. It was real data management heavy, and this is back before a lot of the tools that we have now that make things so much easier, before Laravel, before Inertia, before any of the JavaScript frameworks, where you pretty much just has CMSs. And I met a guy named Travis Tidwell at Drupal who was talking about a Drupal module, but he ended up forming a company called Form.io, which is a really sweet form rendering platform that uses JavaScript. And
I was going to say, the name sounded familiar. That's where, okay.
Yeah. We've had Travis on a couple times. And that was in the days of Angular 1, before Vue was really out. I think React was fairly new. Node was fairly new. And his platform used they were Mongo, Express, Node, and Angular. So the mean stack. And it's expanded since then to be fairly JavaScript, agnostic in terms of framework. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I said, hey, this is my site. I want to do this. Would Form.io work for this? He goes, yeah, that'd be perfect. You could do this and this. So I ended up starting to play with it, and I pestered him so much that he asked me to actually come do some work for them. And I actually did a bunch of work for Form.io in Angular 1, and then moved on to Vue after that. But all that from, a 2-minute conversation at a conference.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to be deliberate to make sure that you get those conversations, because it is easy. And I've been to conferences by myself where I've gone to the talks, went to my hotel room, maybe did the after party the last day, and that's it. But you have to definitely be deliberate to talk to the people between the talks. I actually, in fact, a couple of people I've hung out with, they'll skip a talk. If they find they see a talk that they don't think is interesting, they'll skip it, and then they'll just hang out and wander around and talk to people that are in the hallways, or usually a lot of places will have sponsors too.
Yeah, they'll have an expo hall of some kind.
Well, usually, the presentations are recorded anyway, so you can watch it at any time. So unless you specifically want to interact with the presenter or somebody in there, you can always watch those later and take advantage of the other stuff. I know one thing that DrupalCon used to do that I loved, was so much fun, was they did a trivia night. And so people would get together in teams, and they'd have somebody up on the dais, answering the questions and stuff. Then you'd record answers and they'd score it. So much fun. Just because it was so much geek humor. Unless you weren't in the community, you might not get half of the jokes because it was so geeky. And one of the favorite things I can still remember from one we did at the World War II Museum in New Orleans one year was the team names. Alone, just looking at the roster of the team names, the names that people came up, cracked me up so bad. But that was so much fun, and one of the highlights of the conference every year, for sure.
Yeah, Erik, I'm curious, were there big announcements at VueConf, new things in Vue or in the community?
It's more incremental. It feels like they're incrementally going from Vue 3 came out a couple years ago. They're being very cautious about the updates. Things are kind of taking longer. We heard a little bit more about Vite in the conference, because Evan Yu is basically juggling both projects, Vue and Vite. And
isn't he also involved in what is it, V0?
Void Zero.
Void Zero, yes. Yeah, exactly. So that was another, he talked a little bit about Void Zero and the new company. And then the Vapor Mode, which is this new compilation strategy for Vue. He's talked about it before in previous conferences, but it was just more detail, more information about it. It's funny. A lot of times a lot of these updates are we're just making things faster, which is good. And our compilers are becoming smarter. And now we have this new build system behind. That was all very, very interesting to see that, the community still moving forward. And I think he did have some Q&As. I'm not sure if it was this one or the last one I had, but he always gets asked, how are you juggling the work between Vite and Vue? And are you the sole bottlenecked? And he's every year he says that he's been given more and more of the responsibility, especially of Vue, to the community and to these high-level Vue core team members that help run the project. So that way he can step back and do other things. And I think he talked a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I've heard some talk about, on the Deja Vu podcast and other places about how there's a whole, like for Vite, there's a whole team. It's not just him. There's a Vite core team, and I've heard talk from people on there. So, there's definitely greater distribution of work, so you don't have the, if Evan gets hit by a truck, the proverbial truck, one day, then the work would still continue on, and there's people that are versed in what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think with this RollDown and this his new company, they're really planning to open source a lot of what they're working on to make this compiler faster. I don't know all the details of it. It sounds really interesting though.
Well, I think the idea is, as I understood it, because I talked about it, I think last week or previous episodes as picks, but if the idea is to create, sort of one, I don't know if you want to say one stack to rule them all, but at least one tool chain that's somewhat integrated, because with Vite as it is, he was incorporating roll up. And so now they're creating, roll down, which is their own version of roll up, except written in Go, if I remember correctly.
Rust?
Oh, man. Yeah, maybe.
Go
it was
or Rust,
one of those, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the languages du jour in that area. But anyway, that's basically what Void Zero is. And
yeah, I'm just looking at his latest tweet. 3 times faster builds, better chunk splitting controls, advanced chunks, better correcting strictness, module execution, order guarantee.
So I guess the question that I have to kind of bring us back around to VueConf a little bit is, because I haven't really been following along with what's going on in the Vue community. So what does it look like at this point? What if I was like familiar with React, or I had been following along with it a few years ago? What's changed? What's different?
Yeah, it's been pretty stable for a while. The community, for a while, there was this big gap between Vue 2 and Vue 3, and a lot of companies were in Vue 2 and they were migrating to Vue 3, and then Vue 2 had an end of life on it. There is one company out there that will give you additional support if you pay them, if you're still on Vue 2. However, that transition, I think the end of life was last year. I'd have to look at the exact dates. So the community is definitely on the Vue 3 world now, and Nuxt seems to be just gaining more and more steam as the preferred way to start your Vue applications, because it has kind of everything out of the box that you need and it has some really nice features like file-based routing and the SSR and static site generation and all those fun terms that we've talked about a lot. So you can really start your app there. If I was starting a new Vue app today, I would start it with Nuxt. And there is a Nuxt, I believe Nuxt 4 is coming out soon, and you can, with the latest version of Nuxt, you can do like a compatibility mode with Nuxt 4, but it's not going to be, it is a breaking change, but it's not anything to like what Vue 2 and Vue 3 was, when that was a really major breaking change. So you can even start playing around with Nuxt 4 and some of the features they're looking at. They speaking of Daniel Rowe, he just put out a roadmap to V4 earlier this month. So you can even try out Nuxt 4 Alpha if you want to try that out. And you're probably asking, well, what's part of Nuxt 4? Like new directory structure, improved data fetching, consistent component names, enhanced head management. He talked a little bit about that during the talks, but still a ways away.
Yeah, I'm going to have to reach out to Daniel and get him to come on.
Yeah, we definitely should.
Sure. I'll reach out to him.
Yeah. Well, cool. Anything else that we should know about with VueConf?
No, I think we covered a lot there.
Yeah, I really want to encourage people, if you can go to an in-person conference, definitely do it. Erik, are you going to be at any conferences later this year?
Yeah, I'm going to be at Cascadia JS.
Oh, is that the one in Seattle? Are they doing it in Seattle? Yeah, I went to that one time. Okay, it was a cool little conference.
Yeah,
you're not far from there, relatively, I guess.
It's about 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, it's September 17th through 20th in Seattle, so check it out. I will be doing a talk there. I'm also going to India. I'll be meeting some international people. There's a Go to serverless conference in August 8th. So yeah, I'm doing a little international travel. I usually try to get most of the travel in the United States, but I have been dipping my toe into some international travel. I've been talking to some people who, once you do a lot of talks, you start meeting a lot of people who do a lot of talks, and it's actually a lot of the same people that do it, especially in like the JavaScript or TypeScript world.
Right.
And there's so much international love out there. There's so many international conferences. It really pretty much dwarfs the United States, to be honest. So especially in the front end world, in the JavaScript world, there's just way more conferences in general, just outside the US. So I'm trying those out. We'll see how this India. I've never been to India before. I'm excited to try it and see how it goes.
Which city are you going to?
I'm going to be in New Delhi, and then I'm going to be in Bangalore.
Cool. Very cool.
Bangalore.
Bangalore? All right.
Yeah. I never know the pronunciation exactly. Indian listeners can correct me off.
Yeah.
You can get some real authentic Indian food too. That'd be good. I'd love to try out some of that curry, man.
Yeah. Your assessment of the international speaking circuit. I mean, in the past, I've been to some of those conferences, not as a speaker, but just because I got invited because of this podcast. And yeah, it seems like a lot of the same people that were speaking at those, they'd be like, yeah, and I'm also speaking at these other handful of conferences. And from what we've heard from Dan Shapir, since he speaks at a lot of them, yeah, it seems like he interacts with a lot of those folks. And, you know, after he sees them a handful of times, a lot of times he'll invite them on this show as well. I'm going to be at a conference. I'm going to be at Commit Your Code conference in September. It's the 26th and 27th, and I'm speaking. And yeah, Erik was saying a lot of people are talking about AI. Yeah, I'm going to be showing you how to build an AI agent with JavaScript. So just, you know,
Nice.
just be aware. I'm still kind of dreaming of, because you're right. And I don't know if you said this before the call or on the call, but yeah, you know, it's basically you have a model and a prompt. And so I'm kind of dreaming of putting some of that stuff together. And then I kind of want to figure out how to put an MCP server behind it and just really kind of knock it out of the park. But we'll see how far I can get in. I think it's a half-hour talk. And then I'm probably going to be speaking at a lot more of the Ruby conferences. But yeah, it's fun stuff to delve into, and it's kind of a fun opportunity to then go and see what other people are doing with it. So
I love Commit Your Code. I was just talking to Danny, our friend Danny Thompson, about it.
Yep.
And who helps put it on. I'm trying to get in on that one too. So we'll see. See. I might be there, but if not, I'll definitely everybody check out Chuck's talk.
Yeah.
It's a cool conference. Like, this is his second year doing it, I believe.
Yeah, if you make it out, we'll have to go get Indian food.
Yeah, it's in Dallas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, check that out, commityourcode.com.
Yeah, good deal. I brought that up specifically because I'm going to be speaking JavaScript or TypeScript. It's probably going to be TypeScript, but anyway. So you mentioned a couple of times a QCLI. Do you want to explain what that is? Because now I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of VueConf, I was just there, and during my talk, I mentioned Amazon QCLI, and I asked, like, has anybody heard of it? And like, not many people have heard of it. So hopefully some people, so hopefully some people do. So we have Amazon Q is our AI assistant to help developers create code. So we have, let me say our official tagline on, if you look it up, it says the most capable generative AI powered assistant for software development is exactly the way we put it. So we're it's an AI assistant extension that you can download for Visual Studio Code. You can try it out there. You can actually Yep, you install it just through the Visual Studio
so it's an
extension marketplace.
Okay.
Yep. You can use it. Or we just came out with the CLI version of it. So it's called Amazon Q Developer CLI.
Okay.
And this one you can install with Brew. You can install for your Mac, Windows Subsystem for Linux, and install it. And it runs on the command line, and you have this kind of chat interface with it. So you can open up your project. You can run Q chat on your command line, and you can be like, hey, add add XYZ to my app, add this feature, add a social login, and it will just run all the code for you. It uses Claude 4 in the background as your model, so it helps does everything for you. It's really slick. It runs commands on your command line, so you can be like run ls or curl this website, grab this information, change it over to Markdown, and include it into the context of the app of Amazon Q CLI, and then it will use that to help bring more context. It has MCP support, so MCP is big. Everybody's talking about that. It has support for that, so you can put all your favorite MCP servers in. And once again, it's free to use with Builder ID, which you don't need a credit card or anything. You just need an email address, and then you can try it today. So I'd highly recommend everybody check it out. We're just trying to get the word out on it, and like, hey, this is a really awesome tool that you can use to help build your apps with.
Yeah.
And some people get confused. They think that it's only if you're using AWS or Amazon products. It has nothing to do with that. You don't have to use AWS or anything. It's just a agentic AI assistant that you can use for your coding.
I want to clarify one term. I know it's kind of a hot topic these days in the AI market, but I never want to assume that people know what things are. So MCP is Model Context Protocol.
Yes.
And that's what it stands for. And essentially what it is it's how do I put it? It's kind of a way of annotating services that your AI can use. And so it basically tells the AI, I know how to set a calendar in Google Calendar. I know how to set up an event, or I know how to modify an event, or I know how to do this, or I know how to do that. And so your model can query the MCP server, figure out what it's capable of doing, and then when you ask it for things or ask it to do things, then it'll say, oh, I can use this tool to look things up or to do extra things. So and then it's not just a prompt like GPT or Grok or Claude, where it's just I tell you a thing and you give me text back, but it actually enables it to, like I said, go look up more information or to interact with the service in one way or another. And so I love the idea of hooking MCP into some of these tools, because then you can make it do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, like one thing, I did this video the other day. If you look on our AWS developers channel, I did the top 3 MCP servers, and you see a funny video that I did. And one thing I really found fun with one of the MCP servers I was working with was the Brave Search MCP server. So, models get out of date and they don't always have the latest and greatest, but then you can install this MCP server that uses Brave Search, and you can have it search for content, and then it can add it in to the context window of Amazon Q CLI. So that way it can more intelligently answer your questions. So you could have it go in and grab the latest information in Tailwind. Like one thing I've seen a lot just playing around, I love Tailwind. Any Tailwind fans?
Oh yeah. Yep.
But just setting up Tailwind for the first time takes, it's really easy. It takes a few minutes. So I like to have my LLM do it, but my LLM always gets confused and installs Tailwind CSS 3 instead of Tailwind CSS 4. So I could use something like an MCP server that uses Brave Search that searches the web for Tailwind 4 instead of Tailwind 3, and then download instructions and be able to install it for me. So just little things like that are helpful.
Yeah, just to back into that a little bit too. So there's the idea of latent space in your model. And the latent space is, here's all the things that we trained it on. And then the way that it works is it predicts what the next word or token should be in its response. And so it can only really do that off of the data that it was trained on. And so Erik's talking about, hey, if it got trained on data that's a year old or 2 years old, then it doesn't know a lot or anything about Tailwind 4. And so that's where he's saying, yeah, I use an MCP server that tells the AI, here's how you go look stuff up, right? And so then it goes and it says, oh, well, I don't know anything about Tailwind 4, so I'm going to go look it up. And then it pulls it back in, it puts it in the context window, which says, for the rest of the prompts that come in this series, I'm going to remember the stuff in here. And so then it can do the right thing. And so, yeah, it's super, super handy to be able to do that kind of it.
Yeah, that's a little bit of the talk I had at VueConf, going back to that a second, because you do have a limited amount of space that the LLM has to do things. So that's called a
Yeah.
context window.
Yep.
So that way, it doesn't remember everything forever. So it only has a certain amount of space it can remember things. So every time you talk to the large language model, you want to make sure it has the right information. You want to kind of preempt the whatever AI assistant tool you're using to make sure it has all the information it needs, so that way it's not relying completely on the model. Although the models are getting so good, I was at the Claude Code conference in San Francisco last month, and with the Claude 4 announcement that came out, I mean, they're moving fast. And it's always like every week there's another model, large language model that's on top, and then someone leapfrogs them, and it's really interesting to see how fast this industry is moving. But still, context windows, things you still want to have, like an MCP server, is really nice to help solve some of these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing is that if you have an MCP server that, for example, will interact with GitHub, or with your email service, or with your reporting service, or things like that, then you can use it to do some of your work, or to get you better information, or things like that. And so even though it's not, I guess it personalizes it more, is what I'm saying, because it can go and get things that directly affect what you're concerned about, instead of just assuming generically, oh, you gave me this prompt and here's my answer. And so it really does open up all kinds of possibilities for you.
In fact, in that video I just had, the third one I really liked was the GitHub MCP server. So you can push up PRs, you can do all sorts of, you can look through your own projects and grab information, and then add that into any questions that you ask.
Yep. Yeah, there's so much cool stuff you can do with that. So how do people get the QCLI or install? You said you can just get it as an extension on VS Code, which I assume works with Cursor as well, since that's its basis.
What's the basis? What are you saying?
Cursor is based on VS Code, so I'm assuming you can get it there too if you want.
Yeah, well, I would probably recommend, and I'll maybe in the show notes, is we have a GitHub repository. It's open source, so we'll have the Amazon Q Developer CLI. I think maybe try that one out first. Okay. And just you can either search for Amazon Q Developer CLI through GitHub, look at the show notes here, and then right on the GitHub page is instructions on how to install it for Mac OS, Linux, Windows, or you can even remote. Like if you're SSHing into a box and you want to use it, you can install it.
Oh, nice.
So I'm looking, Eric, I'm just looking at the docs page and then also looking at the repo. Now, I'm a fan of the Warp terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that listed in either place. Am I understanding correctly that you wouldn't be able to use it with Warp?
No, you should be able to use it with Warp. Yeah.
Okay.
That should work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Warp is just it's a CLI, but, so it'll run your Z shell or your bash or whatever. Okay. And so as long as it's installed and you have a command line,
okay,
you can access it from the command line, you should be able to run it.
Right. Okay.
I mean, Warp has its own AI capabilities. And
it does.
So
you might
I don't know how those jive.
Doubling up.
Yeah. Hey,
you
Warp,
just
write me a good prompt for QCLI.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's got, you can just with Homebrew, so I would assume it would be available.
What's really cool about the time we're in, there's so many neat tools out there, but it's, you can really kind of pick and choose what you want to try out.
Yeah.
The way I'm feeling listening to, we've talked with people about MCP and we're talking about all this stuff, and I've been, in terms of the explosion of tools available, we used to talk about JavaScript fatigue with all the frameworks and stuff. I'm sort of feel like I'm drowning in all the different tools and LLMs and integrations and stuff that are available out there.
As far as that goes, I mean, there are a ton of tools out there that you can try, but I mean, I'm getting a ton of mileage out of just Copilot, GitHub Copilot. And then, and that's just because, at work, they've already got a license for it. They're paying a license for me. And then, you can pick your model that you want to use, and you can pick a bunch of other stuff to integrate with it. They just approved Cursor, I think, and that's the same. It's the same kind of thing, right? You pick your model and you let it do the work, and so it's really handy to just kind of throw stuff at it and see where it goes. And if that's as far as you get, you're fine, right? It's some of these other tools do other things, and I think they're worth looking at. But if you're looking to get started, something like the QCLI or GitHub Copilot or Cursor or one of these other ones that just hooks into an LLM that's available on the internet is a really good place to start.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot of good things about Claude. So
I really like Claude. It works great. Check it out.
very cool. Well, yeah. Was there something else that we wanted to talk about here?
Amplify.
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes and then we got to do picks so I can make it to my meeting.
Me too.
Yeah, we certainly can talk about Amplify. I was going to say, yeah, definitely. Amplify is going strong. If you don't know, that it's a set of tools that help front-end developers create full-stack apps on AWS. And it's kind of a few different things. Just for anybody that doesn't know what this is, it's a I was about to say an AI library. We're talking about AI so much. No, they have a UI library for it, which is a free open source library you can download it has like buttons and a bunch of things to it. They also have something called connected components, which help you like connect to AWS services like your S3 bucket, like as a file uploader. It has something called like storage browser. And then it has an authenticator, which is a way to add in like authentication into your app. And then it has like a JavaScript and a TypeScript library and some other libraries or some other frameworks. And then there's a hosting service. So we have a hosting service. So this isn't funny. I was just listening to a rival podcast. I guess I won't name them, but they were
You can
talking
name them. If they're a good show, people should know about them.
Yeah. Syntax FM. With Wes Boss and them, and this was like a couple months ago, and they're like, I can't believe AWS doesn't have a managed hosting service. And I'm like, yeah, we do have a managed hosting service. It's called AWS Amplify Hosting. So you can host your static sites or your server-side rendered sites.
Okay.
We support Next.js, Astro, Vue, React, Angular, all your favorite frameworks. So you can have a managed hosting system. It's called AWS Amplify, and we're adding new features all the time to that. And then we have something called Gen, which is more of our infrastructure as code tooling. So we found that a lot of people, like a lot of front end devs, when they look at AWS, they're like, wow, this is like, there's so much there and I got to be an AWS expert. So we have some levels of abstraction on top of what we call our cloud development kit, which helps you create the backend for AWS. So you can create S3 buckets, Lambda functions. You can even talk to Amazon Bedrock, which is our API for a bunch of different AI models, large language models. And then you can even drop down to our cloud development kit layer, CDK layer, to add other things in. So we have a bunch of different tooling for it, and we're just continuing to move forward. We're trying to get just more people to know that AWS is definitely an option for front end developers, and that that it's available out there, and it's pretty competitive.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, I can't remember who I was hearing about it from, but it seemed like it was this super nice backend as a service. It seems like there's a whole lot more to it now with the UI components and some of the other hosting options and your ability to, lock into some of those services that are really nice to have, like the Lambda functions and things like that. So, man, I might have to go have another look at it.
And by the way, I did reach out to Wes after I heard that podcast on X, and I'm like, hey, by the way, we do have. He's like, yeah, he knew about it. Just at that 1 second, I think even Scott Tilinsky mentioned it after he didn't realize we had it. So for anyone's listening, you don't need to reach out to Wes. We talked.
No public shaming required.
Yeah. Cool. So is that something that, let's say that I'm using React or Vue? We've talked a bunch about Vue. So how do I start putting something together for Amplify if I'm thinking, I kind of want to build a thing. I don't necessarily want to be a back-end expert, and Amplify seems like it's something that will help. How do you start plugging stuff into it and moving fast and breaking things?
Yeah. Well, we have a whole doc site. We have a whole getting started guide on our docs.amplify.aws, and you can just follow the getting started guide to look at how to use this. And you can also mix and match that. You can just use the hosting by itself and not use any of the backend services that we have. So that's certainly, we have a whole Amplify console. So once you sign up for your AWS account, you just search for Amplify, and then you can connect up your GitHub repository or your GitLab or a bunch of different version control systems. And then once you connect it, every time you push, it'll build your site. And there you go. You can have different branches. So if you want to have like a testing branch and a QA branch. And so you can have multiple branches, we have obviously domains. You can have multiple subdomains. You can password protect them if you like. You can hook it into your existing CI/CD pipeline. You have like Jenkins or something like that. We have hooks available so you can have it build. But I would say to start off with, just check out the docs.amplify.aws and take a look at some of the guides there. And then you can easily just connect it all.
Yeah. What's the URL for that?
Docs.amplify.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know AWS was a top level domain.
Yeah.
Oh, it's .aws is the TLD?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
That's fancy. Yeah, you said amplify.aws and I was like, okay, but what's the website? So that's good to know. Very cool. Well, is there anything else going on with you that we want to talk about here within the last couple minutes, or should we just move into picks?
No, yeah, just I guess to go back, hope to see if you are at any of these conferences we're going to be at. Come and say hi to us. Everybody here on this call included. Guess I know Steve. You said even you're going to be at VueConf next year. So.
Yep, that's the plan.
Yep. Steve, do you want to start us off with our picks?
Sure. So before I get to the high point of every episode, at least the ones that I'm on, the dad jokes, I'm going to pick a movie. And I saw this when I was on my way to Washington, D.C. with my son's class at the end of last month. And it's called One Life. It came out in 2023. It stars Anthony Hopkins. And it's a true story about a guy named Nicholas Weldon, who right before Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia in 1939, they had already taken over the Sudetenland. And so there was a lot of orphans and children there whose parents had been taken or disappeared. And so he worked with some other friends and arranged transport of a bunch of orphans, Czech children, to England. And what made it tricky was that England would only take them if they had a family that was willing to take them, and they had to pay £50 for a fee for each child to come over. And so he had to come back and use letters to the editor and the media and raised a bunch of money and was able to transport on 8 different trains about 600 orphans to England to be with families. And the plan was that they would be able to reunite after the war. Well, that never happened because all their families disappeared or were sent to the camps. And so he sort of sat on it and kept it quiet. And then in 1988, in the 1980s, it was 1987, 88, he still had a scrapbook of all these kids. He had the addresses where they'd sent. And he turned them over to a historian whose husband happened to be a newspaper reporter. And they did some investigation. And long story short, they brought him on this British show called That's Life, which is sort of a funny comedy type show. And they introduced one of the kids that he had saved that never knew who had saved her. And then these kids started coming out of the woodwork. I was one of the ones who saved. And so the next week they had like 60 actual kids that he had saved in the 90s that never knew who had helped to get them out. And he ended up being knighted by Queen Elizabeth in the early 90s. It's an unreal story, fantastic story. And the movie's really good. And it actually recreates the actual TV show from Britain. So if you go on YouTube and just Google Nicholas Winton, Winton, That's Life, it's the first thing that'll come up. Really moving story. And it was interesting for me because I was on my way to DC, and one of the things that we saw was the Holocaust Museum when we were there, which is quite a moving experience in itself. But a really good movie worth watching. I've already watched it twice in the last month. So on that note, we'll move to the dad jokes of the week while I get my media set up here real quick. So
yeah, +1 on that movie. Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I've been watching YouTube clips of it and I'm like, wow, that really happened. It's insane.
Yeah, there's an interview they did with Nicholas Winton, and there was a 60 Minutes interview I think they did with him. And he's just one of the most humble, quiet guys you ever seen. And it's like, he didn't want to brag about the scope of what he did. But they said at the end of the movie, they estimate there are 6,000 people that are here as a result of what he did back in 1939. So anyway, did you know, and this is some Star Wars trivia, that Darth Vader had a daughter named Ella? Ella Vader, get it? Right. So teacher tells her class, all right, make up a sentence that includes the words defense, defeat, and detail. And the student writes, when a horse jumps over defense, defeat go first, and then detail. And then one time I was on a train And this woman looked at me, this really cute woman, and said, "Every time you smile, I feel like inviting you to my place." I said, "Are you single?" She said, "No, I'm a dentist." So those are the dad jokes of the week.
All right. I'm going to jump in here with my picks. I always do a board game pick. I'm going to pick a game. It's called Camel Up. It's basically a camel race. And so what you're doing is you're betting on which camel's going to finish first, which camel's going to be the first at the end of each round. There are other things that you can bet on as well. But yeah, you get paid out at the end of the round, depending on what you bet on. And then at the end of the game, if you were the first person to pick the camel that won, then you get more money. And then the second person to pick that camel gets money. The third place person, if you picked wrong, then it costs you $1 or whatever the currency is. It's kind of a fun game. As you move the camels around, if it moves onto the same space as another camel, it actually goes on top of the camel. And then if a camel if a camel moves and there are camels on top of it, they all move. And so it moves itself and everything on top of it. And so it's fun. I think we played it in half hour. Yeah, this is not a new game by any means. Board Game Geek has it at a weight of 1.5. So really friendly, easy to pick up game. The age range it recommends is 8+, and it can play up to 2 to 8 players. And so anyway, super fun game. So I'm gonna pick that one. Yeah, we just, for my buddy's birthday, we all got together, me and 3 other couples, and we just played board games. And then one of the couples left, and then we played other board games that we could play with less people. So anyway,
you're a wild and crazy guy, Chuck.
It was a lot of fun. So Camel Up. And then I've been listening to the Sword of Truth books by Terry Goodkind. I'm in the middle of the last one, the 15th book. And they kind of come in pairs and trilogies and stuff. And so, you can kind of pick it up in the middle if you pick the right book and, just listen to the 2 or 3 that are in that kind of mini section of the series. But they're really, really good. I really have enjoyed those. I started reading them in high school, and then I went on a mission for the church and hadn't really looked at them in years, and it turned out that he'd written like 8 more of them. So anyway, so I'm going to pick the Sword of Truth books by Terry Goodkind. Yeah, I think that's all I've got right now. So Erik, do you have some picks for us?
I was going to say real quick, with a name like that, you certainly can't be a mean guy, can you?
Okay, yeah, sure. I have a couple. I love board games. Those are fun. I guess I'll just throw out here, my wife gave me the NASA Artemis Space Launch System Lego. If you haven't seen this, it's
really?
like a ginormous Lego spaceship that you put in, that it's in like docking bay, that you kind of like, it's a lot of work.
My son would love that.
It's like 3,601 pieces.
How much does it cost?
Legos aren't cheap. It's 28 inches is the height, or 70 centimeters. It's a big guy, but it's super fun putting it together. So I've been spending my evenings before bed like putting together this Lego monstrosity. And then while I've been doing that, I've been watching, I guess my other pick would be the 15th Doctor. So I'm a Doctor Who fan. So the latest one, his name is Ncuti Gatwa. And it's just it's on Disney Plus. So you don't even need to be really, you don't need to know the 50-year history of Doctor Who to like jump in. They kind of set it up so anybody could just start with these new seasons that are on Disney Plus. So it's been fun getting back into Doctor Who after a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
How do they handle that? I've never watched it, but how do they handle the changing of all the different actors who play Doctor Who? Is there like plot lines, or is it just sort of seamless and you just sort of assume it's the same basic person?
Yeah, they regenerate like at the end of their run. It's usually a few seasons, and then they regenerate, and then they usually don't reveal who the new Doctor is until like the next season. So you'll see them kind of blowing up in a bunch of light, and then all of a sudden the next season will come out and they'll have a new Doctor, and they've had all sorts of people in the last few years.
Right.
So it's really interesting and fun.
So the regeneration is part of the plot line then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
Even all the way from like the first Doctor, he kind of falls over, and different effects back then in the 60s. But and then they regenerated into the next Doctor.
Yeah, originally they weren't like the first Doctor, the actor. I can't remember if he died or if there was some other reason, but they had to replace him, and so they invented the regeneration thing to bring in a new actor, and then they've just used it for 50 plus years. I remember going to the 50th anniversary thing in the theater where they had stuff, and they nowadays they could just deep fake it, but they had brought in clips from all the other Doctors, and so you had all the Doctor Who's. Anyway, it very, very, it's a fun series for sure. I haven't watched. I think the last Doctor I watched was Peter Capaldi, or whatever his name is, something like that.
Yep.
So yeah, I would like to get back into it. I kind of want to get my kids into it. So
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. And they do all kinds of shenanigans. One of the Doctors tried to finagle it so that he could regenerate back into his current form because he liked it. He's still regenerated into somebody else. But anyway,
it's a very sci-fi, science fiction heavy. So if you don't like science fiction, may not be your right cup of tea. But it has a lot of science fiction and drama in this latest season.
Yeah, and the history on this, it's very. It's fun humor, but there's plenty of kind of British humor because it's a British TV show. So.
Yeah, a lot of campiness too.
Yeah, very much. Some of the campiness, like in the 80s, it's like, I don't enjoy this. But in basically from kind of the more modern ones, I'm trying to remember the first one, the guy before David Tennant, Chris Eggleston. From then on, some of the effects, it's like, okay, you didn't budget enough for that, but the campiness is not so overboard that you're sitting there going, okay, this is stupid. It's really been a good show since then, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you want to go and see really bad really good science fiction, but really bad special effects and campiness, then go back and watch the classic Who series, which is from the 60s all the way to early 80s. And then you'll see some really campy stuff. There's some really good episodes, but a lot of things that you'll have to get used to if you want to do that. But you can start over. They rebooted the series or whatever in 2008, 2010.
Something right
That's
there.
where I would start. Yeah.
Yeah. If you get way into it, you can go watch them. Just be aware. The other thing is that on the classic Doctor Who, they used to recycle the tapes, and so they don't have all of the old episodes. And so if you're watching them in order of what they have, sometimes there are gaps.
Yeah, the first 2 seasons for sure. Yeah, there's missing episodes. You can get it on BritBox if you want to watch that. It's 2005 is when the new modern Who started.
Yeah, and they're super fun. The modern ones are super fun. And they each have their own flavor of the Doctor, which is also fun. So, all right, good deal. Well, before we wrap up, Erik, if people want to get in touch with you or find you on the internet, where do they find you? Yeah,
you can find me I'm on X at ErikCH. I'm on Blue Sky, if you're a Blue Sky fan, at ErikCH or Erik Hanchett on Blue Sky. And yeah, probably those are the best places. Also, if you look at the AWS Developers channel, you can find some videos from me on there, and that's on YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn.
Yeah, and when he says Erik is spelled E-R-I-K.
Yes, E-R-I-K. Yep, E-R-I-K-C-H.
For those that, if you're like, can't find it, use K. You'll find it.
Yes.
Are you still doing much on Program with Erik?
Oh yeah, I have my YouTube channel. It's Program with Erik on YouTube. I have stopped posting there as much, but occasionally I still post there too. Yeah, so check out my YouTube channel. I have many videos on there.
All right,
you're doing once a week for a long time, if I remember.
Yeah, I used to.
All right, well, I'm going to wrap us up. Thanks for coming, Erik. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
All right, till next time, folks. Max out.
Bye.